The Supreme Court of Appeal has ordered that former President Jacob Zuma must return to the Escort Correctional Center to finish serving his sentence. In a unanimous judgment, the SCA declared that Zuma did not lawfully complete his prison sentence. The judgment followed intense exchanges in the SCA in which the powers of the Correctional Services Commissioner and the role of the Medical Parole Advisory Board came under the spotlight. The SCA justices stressed the need to understand how former Correctional Services Commissioner Arthur Fraser assessed medical reports ahead of releasing former President Jacob Zuma on medical parole. Advocate Maribola Mphahlele for Correctional Services insisted that there was nothing untoward about the decision to release Zuma on medical parole. Mphahlele argued that the Medical Parole Advisory Board report is not the deciding factor for medical parole.
There are two reports, medical reports, that recommended that Mr. Zuma be placed on parole. And the first one is the one of MAPA, and these are the reports of the doctors that has examined Mr. Zuma. And the second one is the one of Dr. Mphatso, who is also a member of the Medical Parole and Advisory Board.
Advocate Dalimpofu for Zuma argued that his client's medical condition undoubtedly allowed him to be released on medical parole. He contended that doctors who examined Zuma were clear that he suffered from a terminal disease or condition.
Surely the commissioner can't just wake up and give you medical parole. That I accept. The commissioner has to apply certain criteria and so on. And that's where the relationship is. But one cannot, and I beg the court not to fall into that trap, negate Section 75 and only zoom into Section 79.1.
The Helen Suzman Foundation submitted in the SCA that the Medical Parole Advisory Board should give a positive response for the medical parole to be granted. Senior Counsel Max du Plessis for the Helen Suzman Foundation contends that the then National Commissioner Arthur Fraser failed to explain why he overlooked the recommendation of the board.
The board must make a recommendation to the Commissioner, as the case may be, on the appropriateness to grant medical parole in accordance with Section 79. So it's an embedded power for the board. Firstly, to discharge its function, it must make a recommendation. And its recommendation is a value-based one on the appropriateness to grant medical parole.
The AfriForum maintained that it is only the Medical Parole Advisory Board that can decide whether an application for medical parole complies with the legal requirements. The DA argued that former President Jacob Zuma should have been evaluated by an independent medical practitioner.
And the problem with Dr. Martha filling that out is that was supposed to be, in terms of the regulations, an evaluation of Dr. Martha's application by the Correctional Services medic. Yes. And that's not what it is. It's a document that Dr. Martha himself filled out.
The SCA declared that former Correctional Services Commissioner Arthur Fraser was not legally permitted to release Zuma on medical parole without positive recommendation of the Medical Parole Advisory Board. The court also ruled that Fraser relied on irrelevant factors to justify his decision.
The order of the judgment reads as follows. 1. Paragraphs 5 and 6 of the order of the High Court are set aside. 2. Save for the above, the appeal is dismissed with costs. 3. The first and second appellants are ordered to pay the costs of the first, second, and third respondents jointly and severally, the one paying the other to be absolved. The costs shall include the cost of 2 counsel.
Zuma was handed a 15-month prison sentence by the Constitutional Court in June 2021 after he defied its order to appear before the State Capture Commission. He was released after serving less than 2 months of his sentence. The appeal court ordered that it is up to the Correctional Services Commissioner to determine whether the time spent by Zuma on unlawful medical parole should be considered in determining the remaining period of his incarceration. The court ordered that if the law permits, the Commissioner may consider the disputed period when determining ground for Zuma's release. The SCA also lambasted the Department of Correctional Services for releasing a media statement stating that Zuma had completed his sentence in October, this while the SCA was yet to finalize the matter. Makhala Masiteng, SABC News, Bloemfontein.